evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Uh, my apologies for the late start. Things rarely go in a straight line, and you never know when technical difficulties are going to pop up. So thank you for coming back at 6:30. Just a real quick thing before we get started. I just want to share with people watching how I got to meet Napus. When I will shamelessly plug a a program that's going on at the library right now to come into the library and provide some auxiliary programming during the Away from Home exhibition. And I specifically was looking to get some First Nations people who would be able to talk. The exhibition is fantastic, and it gives a lot of history about an unfortunate dark chapter in American history. And I was looking for other individuals who could flesh out how this had affected and is affecting Native Americans moving forward from the program. And so I contacted the First Nations Studies Department at UWGB. And I am used to when I deal with academia, I usually it's kind of a quick hit sort of thing, and I just see if people were interested. And when I contacted the First Nations Department, I was informed that no one was really interested because we'd never met each other, and that didn't even occur to me, and it didn't make sense until somebody said it to me. But I asked if it was too late, if I could get together and meet with some people, and fortunately, I was set up for a meeting with Napus, who is joining us this evening, and I went to UWGB a couple of times and had an incredible time just listening to Napus talk, uh, tell his stories, tell his history. Is experiencing living history. So I'm so grateful that we could um, bring Napus to the library virtually to be with us this evening and for two more dates in the future. So Napus, how are you? Oh, I think your mic is muted. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. You should. I can't hear you at all. I'm sorry. Your volume isn't coming through. I can see you, but we can't hear you. And I checked your mic, and you are not muted. So let's see. Echo cancellation. Can are you coming through at all now by any chance?
How's that? Any better?
That is much better. Yes.
Okay, I had to
hear
unplug
you.
my headphone for some reason.
Oh, okay. Now, fortunately, I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking, but I can hear myself echoing. But now
Can you
it's
hear me
gone.
yet?
I can
Can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm better now.
Okay, now I can hear you as well. So, Napus, welcome this evening, and could you just give us and the people watching along, could you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
How about if I do it in my language?
That would be awesome. Hold on, let me switch so that I am not equally sharing the screen with you, but let me give you the majority of the screen. So please go ahead.
Hey, I want to say, well, for greeting, we use the word poisson, which is just a loan word. When the French came in, they said bonjour, but we couldn't pronounce those syllables, so it became poisson. So
Really? Is that true?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we use the word posol for coming and going, but because I'm a student of my language, that I had been told by elders that was actually the form of our saying bonjour.
Oh,
So
okay.
more correctly, I was ane maonuiak, sto wapanoak imas, napus the takam, wasa the totam mishik, mahwan the totam, the manitan skunian maonuiak eomas. So I greeted everybody, as on it maonuiak. That's like, how are you all doing? I pronounced my name Napos, and which actually means, in a way, a first rabbit or first teacher. That's a cultural Menominee name that's been passed down through my family history for thousands of years. I also announced that Owassa and the Totam. I announced that the bear is my clan. And then I said Mashik, which means and I said Mahwal, the Totam, and I said, and the wolf is my clan. So then I said, I'm happy to be here with everybody. So that's my cultural official greeting. We all do that when we meet each other.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I would like to invite everyone who is following along. If you have questions or any sort of comments that you would like to make and to get to Napos this evening, please just please just enter them in the comments bar with whatever you're following. But our conversations, as we've discovered, are very non-linear. They're very tangential. They go all over the place. So, but they're always a lot of fun and they're very informative. And I think you'll enjoy joining in tonight. So, you have been with the UWGB First Nations Study Program since 2007, correct?
Actually, January of 2006. Actually.
Okay. How did that all happen? How were you approached? Did you approach them? I'm just curious because that is something we never talked about, is how you wound up with your position at UWGB.
Well, actually, I was walking by and I seen a bunch of food on a table, so I walked over there and.
That sounds like something I would do also.
Well, us Menominee, I love humor, so. But I went back to college. I tried several times, but it never worked. So I finally went back in 2004. Actually, no, before that, years go by. Anyway, I graduated in 2004. That's what I did finally, after I don't know how many years of studying. So I was one of the years I had went to UWGB to participate in there. At that time was called American Indian Studies, and in that program I got to meet Dr. Lisa Poupart, and so I went there for a year just to boost my academic resume. I went back to the college on our reservation called NACE College, Native American Educational Service. I was actually based out of Chicago. I ended up graduating, and because I got to know Dr. Poupart personally and actually adopted her as my daughter, that I had started doing some carpenter work for you because I'm a retired carpenter. And so one day along the way, she asked me if I was interested in teaching a class because they had overbooked her for the same schedule. And I said, yeah, sure, if I can. She said, well, you got your degree. I said, yeah, I got a degree, and so she invited me and I started and been there ever since. And in fact, that couple of years in a row, I was one of the highest ranked instructors there because every semester the students give a evaluation for their instructor or professor. And so about 3 or 4 years in, I was challenged because they had found out that I only had a bachelor's degree. And supposedly, in order to teach what I was teaching, I was to have a master's or doctorate. And so eventually they ended up kind of like testing me, putting me through I actually taught a class to them, and they were pretty surprised of the way I conducted myself, my sample of study and what I did. And I mean, there was even one or two of the professors that couldn't believe I didn't have my master's or doctorate. And so I told them, I said, well, I don't have to be here. I said, if you don't want me here, that's fine. I'll go somewhere else. I mean, I'm just doing this as a favor to Dr. Poupart. And they said, well, we can help you get your master's. I said, okay, if you can help me get it in Menominee language and culture, I'll do it. There's no reason for me to study anything else. And they said, well, we can't teach you any more than what you already know. I said, well, there we go. Let's draw the line. So they were actually gonna put me in for a what they call it, honorary master doctorate. But I told them no. I said, my thinking is, to me, that's not fair to those that worked hard for that. And that's the way I am. I said, no. I said, if I didn't work for that, then I don't want it. But I'm okay where I'm at. And so they kept me, and I'm still there. So
that's great. I mean, that's great that that they saw that it really wouldn't have been anything more than just an honorary degree. That it wasn't worth your time or their time, really. But now, can I ask a question? In that you had said that you had adopted Dr. Poupart. Now, is that formally or is that more of a cultural?
Well, I'll put it this way: it's formerly Menominee style.
Could you flesh that out for a little bit? Someone who's ignorant on that.
Well, a formal adoption is, got to ask the state and all that kind of stuff. We ask God, and God grants it. So I think that's more powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
And so actually, because I'm from my mother's dad was Wolf Clan, and also because I'm Bear Clan and part Eagle Clan on my grandfather's side, I have actually the right within my tribal culture to do that. And so when I adopt people, we look at it's a real adoption as if that person is your real flesh and blood. And so that's like I said, that's the Creator blessed it, and that's as best you can get, I guess.
Well, yeah, definitely more powerful than just a piece of paper you get through the state, right?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna challenge the Creator and tell him, hey, you need to sign a piece of paper for me.
It probably seems like a wise choice.
Yeah. And the blessing is things work out. I mean, she felt at home. She met my family. My family fully embraced her. They started calling her niece and everything. And so soon as my family, and that's the way Native people are, we adopt whoever needs to be adopted. And at that time, Dr. Poupart really didn't have a father in her life. And that's one way we have is that, if our father or grandparent ever passed away, we have a right to approach the elder, usually in our family, and ask them to take their place. And a lot of tribes do that.
Wow. But what I don't know always amazes me. There's always new things to learn. And that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah.
The first question came in, and it is hardly the most well, they say that you're never supposed to ask a lady their age, but I don't know about asking an elder if it is okay. But someone wanted to know how old you were.
I'm April. I turned 68, and in our culture, asking someone their age is actually kind of a what do you want to say, a good sign, because you want to know, are you elder? Are you older than me? It's not a slap in the face. I don't know where that comes from and why it would be so, disrespectful, because, to us, age is the importance of intelligence and wisdom. And, if you're, we say when you're in a grandparent's age, so when you're a grandparent, you were an elder, and I was in my 40s. I was like 42. In fact, I was the same age as my mother when I became a grandfather. Oh, and so an elder told me, well, now you're an elder. And because at the time I was feeling my oats and everything yet that I said, well, okay, I'll be an elder in training. But there is no disrespect in our culture for asking someone their age.
All right. Another question came in just shortly after. And how is your clan determined? Carrie Moyer wanted to know how your clan is determined.
Okay, the things I'm going to share under the Menominee culture is things that I was taught. Now, it's just like anything else. You can go to different tribes, different people within the same tribe, and you might get a different answer. Sure. But what I was taught being brought up was we follow Father's clan. And that goes back a long time. And that's been voiced around circles many times. People are always asking me, because different tribes follow different styles. So one of the closest tribes to us, the Oneida, they follow Mother's clan. But I was taught Father's clan. And it says it down through history that because of that lineage that we come from. And even when I was young, my biological father, had left when I was like four years old, and I never really knew him. In fact, I never even knew he was Native. He was Indian. But I was raised under my mother's family, and so my grandmother always talked about her clan, and she was Snapping Turtle clan. And so I learned a lot of things about the Snapping Turtle clan. But later on, when I got older, I heard her tell someone else in the family that, no, you follow your father's clan. She said, I am Snapping Turtle clan. You follow your father's side. And so I asked her, and she said, well, go talk to your grandpa. And so I went to talk to my grandpa, and I said, well, Grandpa, do I follow your clan? He shook his head, because my grandfather was very laid back and kind of secretive about talking about those things. He always said there was a place and time that we talk about that stuff. And so later on, I found out he was Wolf Clan. I was excited because I love dogs and puppies and things. I was excited. I love the Wolfman and the Werewolf. And I was happy. I used to see the Werewolf. I was, that's my clan, And so I was happy then until, I came across an elder, and I found out who my dad's real dad was. And he wasn't an attorney. He had the last name Leroy. In fact, his father was Louis Leroy, who was one of the first professional Indian baseball players, and played for the Boston Red Sox. So I found out he was my grandfather. So then I asked my elder, I said, well, would that be the clan I follow? And he said, yeah. So he pointed me to an elder that was an elder from the Bear Clan that actually was a very significant elder with a following that we call the Big Drum. And so I went to him, and he actually brought me in ceremonially into the Bear Clan. So that's how I finally got home into my Bear Clan roots. But I was told, because of what I do, that I use all four clans. So that's why I announce my grandmother and grandfather's side. And so, but as I was taught that Menominee, for the most part, do follow Father's clan. And my elder once told me too, he said, the reality is that, if you think of it this way, that you pretty much know your mother, but sometimes you can question who your father is. And I was one of those. I found out to my dad's side. I knew who my dad was. My mom told me, but my grandma had to tell me who my grandfather was. So, so it happens.
So when you refer to your elder, how is that structured? I know you're an elder, but you refer to someone as your elder. Are you referring to that person as when you weren't yet an elder, or is there sort of a hierarchy within the elder group?
Well, think of it this way. You'll never catch up to anybody's age.
Yeah, that's true. You're always at a disadvantage.
So they're always, even though that one has gone on, and I don't like to use his name because to us that's impolite to talk about someone after they have one on, but he gave me permission to use his name, so that way I could always share who my elder was. So he was my mother's first cousin. His mother and my mother's father were brother and sister. And so there was a time when he was getting old, and he was wanting to pass on a lot of the cultural things. His parents, especially his father, was a very, very powerful, real medicine man, not the Hollywood or bragging type, but he was a real medicine man. In the old way, we call them teachers or holy people or whatever. We have our own words for those. And so he taught me the real, I could say, connected back to where our original tribal ways come from. And so his mother was also a medicine lady, and that was my grandfather's sister. And so when he was searching out, looking for someone to learn these ways, because his kids are out and about, especially the boys, they weren't doing traditional type things. And so he came to me one day and asked me, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'll be glad to," because I had sobered up. I quit drinking. I started following, the good, what we call the red road, which is the good, powerful road. And so I took him in, and for 8 years, he taught me as much as I needed to know, and then some. I mean, there were times that he taught me things that would make my head spin. And then I had some other elders, but he was, I say, my main elder. So if you want to talk about kind of when you go to college, he would have been my professor, and and he gave me my Juris Doctorate. So whenever I would learn something, and we have the 7 gifts of the 7 ways, and so every time that he would pass that on to me to where I could use it, he said, "No, it's yours," and I would get an eagle feather for that. So them are my diplomas. And so in our traditional way, that's the way we learn. So when we talk about our elders, especially our significant elders, that's the one. And he's very, very, very well known. And even, to one thing that really, really took it to heart for me was that before he had passed away, because he suffered heavily from diabetes, that after he had passed away, I had found out that he was going around telling people to come to me now. He said, he's the one that's watching over you. He's my direct pupil. So you go to him when you need things. So that's why I got what I got.
Wow. So you had mentioned a medicine man and a medicine woman, but it's not at all what you think of, the Hollywood version of it.
No.
What's the real version of it then? And how do you think it wound, I mean, except for creative license, how do you think it wound up being cinematically what it was?
Well, somewhere along the way, I'm 68, so I grew up in the, through the 60s when the old John Wayne westerns were on, and
sure,
and things like that. So in about 69, around there, Hollywood started really paying attention and started doing more truistic type of movies. Like there was a movie came out, Little Big Man, which is kind of a satirical comedy, but it really portrayed a lot more deeper into the Native American way. There was a movie called Man Called Horse, even though they had their what you call the white messiah type hero, that still they really more were intricate in portraying Native American way and dress and outfit and even language. They got into, especially A Man Called Horse, they were using language, and they were subtitling it. So that was the first times that Native language started coming out. But then they started really getting into the mystical area of the Native American way. And so this is where the Hollywood medicine man takes over that. And then at that time is, of course, the hippie era, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you got the hippies trying to get into this stuff and dressing up in jingles and jangles and headbands and feathers and things like that. And then, getting into herbs and whatever, In the meantime, African-American people are starting to get back into their roots, right? The movie Roots. And they're starting to dig into that, and they're looking and they're finding a lot of ways that voodooism and things like that, and also the Asian people are passing on some of their ways. That's where the word shaman comes from. Comes from Asia, and so that's all put into a bundle, and there you have the Hollywood medicine man.
So it's a blend of all. It's more of a amalgamation of different cultural elements.
Well, now they call it New Ager.
Okay.
And like one of our ceremonies we have, a lot of Native tribes have, is called the Sweat Lodge. a lot of people like to link that in connection with the what is that? The sauna baths that the Swedish and people, them Norwegians do, but it's totally different. And so there was one guy a few years ago, I want to say 5, maybe 10 years ago, that actually was doing this kind of stuff, and 3 people died from his behavior of not knowing what he was doing. And he was using a sweat lodge, he was using fasting, but he was totally off the wall. He was just out of it. And so them are the types of things that are dangerous there. People are stealing, from native culture, and there's no laws to prevent it. What some tribes that started doing, back in those days was they would track these people down, and they would send elders to go and witness what they were doing and give them a scolding and tell them to stop it, but there is no law against it unless someone gets hurt. And I mean, even now, the big thing now, you can go walk in almost any store, you can see a dream catcher. And I don't think half the people that make them even know what they're for or where they come from. So that's where the Hollywoodism kicks in, and everybody wants to become this mystical medicine man, and it's really funny too, because at some place I went in, you go in there and it's really quiet, it's like going to church. And that's further from the truth, because when you go to a native ceremony with laughing, joking, teasing, having fun, we're alive.
Yeah.
And we're telling the creator, we're telling the spirits we're alive. We don't have to whisper.
Yeah, what's the point?
And so that's one of the first giveaways when you go in there. The main giveaway is that it asks for money. We never ask for money. Money is so far released from our cultural ways that you offer some money in a ceremony, they tell you to leave. I mean, it's out of place. Money is never allowed at ceremony. So that's another giveaway. If someone's charging for these things, I always say, run away and don't look back. We don't charge nothing for our way, just a gift. Tobacco and a gift is the main thing.
Okay. So what is more of the reality of the situation? I understand the Hollywoodism now a bit more, but what is a genuine medicine man or medicine lady? What are they? What is it more like? What is the real practice of it rather than what we see in movies?
Well, the reality comes is that you're picked from a baby. You're picked from a baby to do this, and elders watch you. I was watched all my life. I was raised with the language. Unfortunately, because of my schooling, I wasn't allowed to speak it. But I can interpret, I can understand, and they watch you. And they watch you. So when my uncle came to me, and he said, I watched you from when you were a little guy. I paid attention to you. I see what you're doing. And now it's time for you to learn, because I hit the grandfather age. And in our society, you're picked when you're at that age, when you're older, because then you're in tune with those things that you need to do. Fasting, there's all kinds of things to get you in tune, because the reality is that when you're in that realm, you are a conduit to the spirit world. So when I came home from Vietnam, I survived Vietnam, but I got in a bad accident and was pronounced dead in an accident and came back too. And so my uncle told me that was one of the things why he came to me, because I went to the other side and I was sent back here. And so my uncle told me, when you were there, you were given a gift, and that's what you bring back to help the people. And so they look for significant things. And I mean, nobody can wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to be a medicine man. It don't work that way. It's just like
Right.
waking up and saying you want to be a priest. You're going to end up in prison. The only unfortunate thing is in the native world, that's not policed. It's not against the law. And so there are a lot of people that are just, ripping people off because of that. But, again, this is America, and I guess they got the right to do it, I guess. But people will tell you, I mean, I've seen a lot of times, and I can see people, I'll tell them, don't do that. Don't do things like that, because you're hurting people. When you lie, you hurt people, and we have what's called 7 gifts. So I don't want to ramble on about all that stuff, but, it's something that I always tell people, be careful around those things.
Sure. When you mentioned language being more put into movies like Little Big Man. Have you do you follow the Predator movies at all?
Oh yeah, I'm waiting for that new one to come out.
Because did you hear that they're releasing one? I believe it's theatrically that's completely in Cherokee.
No, it's Comanche.
Comanche. Excuse me.
Comanche.
So, pardon me. But with subtitles in English, that's going to be available. And I think that's really. I'm more inclined to want to see that since that's the era they're setting it in. It seems like it would make a whole lot more sense to watch it like a subtitled movie. So I can't wait for that. You know, I haven't been interested in a Predator movie in a while, but I think this one sounds pretty interesting.
I see the trailers on it, but years ago, did you know that they took Star Wars? I'm not sure which episode, and they had it translated into Navajo, and there is actually you can actually watch Star Wars translated into Navajo, because Navajo it's a big tribe, and I thought I was in Vietnam with some Navajo soldiers that spoke the language, and I tell you that is a difficult language. I mean, I thought a lot of people say Menominee is or Oneida, but Navajo is really because they just got different ways that they use their tongue or whatever, you know. But and then there was at one time there was a movie called Moonlight over Escanaba, I think it was called, with Jeff Daniels. But because he's from that area or something, but he went to, there was a big powwow. It actually was the first powwow to start the powwow season, we call it, which is in February in Escanaba. And he was there scouting, and he actually picked my first cousin's son and daughter for the movie. And in the movie, they say greetings in Menominee. They say Poso.
Oh, really?
So Menominee hit the big screen.
I've seen that movie advertised, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's just a little short version of it, but they say because that's where he picked up my cousin's kids from. They were dancing at the powwow, and he said, "Yeah, they'd be perfect for the movie. Can we bring them in?" So they made their debut. But also, I have a relative that's part Menominee on her dad's side, and her mother is from the Stockbridge Muncie people, and she's acting in that one of those superhero movies.
Okay.
I can't think of what the character's name is, but she's perfect because in real life she's has an amputated leg, and she's actually what do you call that? Where she can't talk, or she can't hear. Yeah, she's deaf.
Oh, okay.
I can't think of her name, but she's in one of those Marvel superhero, and she plays that kind of character in that movie. And she's awesome in that movie. Then they picked up her, I think it's her younger either cousin or sister too. That's now, is her that Aquina? I can't pronounce her name. Aquina Cox. Her name is Cox, but she's hit the big screen now, and a lot of Native actors coming in now because Adam Beach years ago and one of the other Native lady actors had put forth a group to challenge Hollywood to start using real Native people for actors. And what's his name there? Kevin Costner started doing that. But now they actually have a voice in Hollywood that says no more of this fake Indian stuff. They even challenged that movie Yellowstone with Kevin Costner, that there's a lady on there that portrays to be Indian, but she had kind of not told the truth that she's actually, I think, Chinese. On her dad's side, there is Cherokee blood, but that's through adoption. She's not any really Native. And so they challenged that movie and sit there and say she shouldn't be playing that, because that's one thing they're trying to stop. They're trying to get really Native actors. And at one time, Adam Beach I was watching a podcast of him one time when they first started doing this, and he said one of the things that Hollywood said is that we can't find any Native actors. And he said, all you got to do is look.
Well, yeah.
At that time, there were 4 million registered Native American people in the United States. How can you not find them?
Yeah, you think you could just put an ad in one of the trade papers and someone would see it, right?
Yeah, and well, now they do that. Tribes do casting calls now.
Okay.
And that's how my cousin's daughter got into the casting call. And it just so happened this character that they were looking for someone to play was actually a deaf character. And so she fit And actually, she had taken acting training when she was in school. Yeah, and she's really pretty. But man, she. I watched part of that movie, boy. She's a kick butt character, man. We always laugh because I always say, Adam, Indian woman, boy, you gotta watch. Don't get them mad.
But it's funny, but not funny when you look back at older movies, how they rarely had the actual ethnic groups playing the people. It's very, some of it was horrible, like in Breakfast at Tiffany's, the way they had Mickey Rooney portraying a Chinese person.
Oh, yeah, that was terrible.
It's so horrible. And other times you can tell they weren't trying to, be horrible, but at the same time, why didn't you just use someone who was native to play a native, someone Chinese to play Chinese? America has a lot of different ethnicities. You'd think they would use them, but I mean, now it's obviously a lot better, but it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't.
Even Bugs Bunny, or one where he's hunting, and is an Indian chief on there. Look at Pocahontas.
Oh,
I mean, there's so many things. Back in my day when I got in my teen years, and even when we were still in Milwaukee at the time, in around 66, 67, you had the civil rights, going through and everything. And boy, they were starting to hit on, what do they call that? Blackface.
Oh, yeah.
There was even a restaurant down there called Sambo's that was supposedly named after that gorilla at the Milwaukee Zoo, but that's what they used to call big black men. They used to call them Sambo.
Yeah.
And so that really, but, and then, you couldn't do it to Mexican, you couldn't do it to Asian, but you could still do it to Indians. Till to this day, you can still have the mascot issue that's hitting the fan now, and people can't understand it. And it's always, we're trying to honor you, we're trying to respect you. Really? What did you learn in school? Did you learn anything about respect? And so I think nowadays we're running into that, and people, there's people out there that can't understand it, why. But, then again, you look at America as a whole, how many people really know their true identity of where they come from?
Right.
And that's the thing. And with our people, it's drilled into us growing up. My grandson is starting to understand now at 11 years old what it means to be Menominee, what it means to be Indian. And he's starting to know the difference, notice the difference in people. And I went through the same thing. And unfortunately, it was pumped into me when I went to Catholic school that I was an Indian. And I remember coming home because I had always heard I was Menominee. That was always talked about at my grandpa's house growing up. All of a sudden, they're calling me an Indian. I have come home one day and asked my mother, "Ma, how come I'm an Indian? What's an Indian?" But back in the day too, there was one of my heroes was Geronimo. Man, he was a feisty character. You don't want to fool around with, So he was a hero. He was like my ma, mess with my ma either, And so one day they come out with this movie Geronimo. I sat down. I'm like, he don't look like Geronimo. And it was Chuck Connors, who was
Chuck
about
Connors played Geronimo?
He was like 6'2", blue-eyed, blonde-haired. I guess they painted his skin.
Sure, that.
And me, back in the day, I had pictures of Geronimo. Man, he was my hero. Man, he was everything to me. He was like, what do you say, like. Right now, my hero, it was Batman too. So he was like Batman to me, He was someone, he was a hero, man, But all of a sudden, there's this movie, and it's like, he don't look like Geronimo.
Right.
Geronimo was like, I think Geronimo, they say, was maybe lucky if he was 5'7", 5'8", because he was Apache. Apache people aren't really that tall, But when I seen that movie, I just kind of like, But at that time, that's what it was. Either it was a good actor and they spray painted him, or they used someone Mexican American. And I remember because my stepdad's people were from Mexico, and I remember my grandpa on that side, he would talk about that too. He said, "Well, we are Native people. We're just from across that line that the government put there called the border."
Right.
And he even said, "Well, some of the people in that area, like Apaches and them, they were almost from the same people." And so I guess I said, well, that's okay then, but not Chuck Connors. It wasn't okay for Chuck Connors. Well, then you had Jay Silver. He was playing Tonto, right? which was kind of cool because he always made the Lone Ranger look stupid.
Well, yeah. It didn't seem like it was when I was a kid watching that. He seemed like he could do it really easily too.
Yeah,
It didn't take a whole lot. What about that Geronimo movie that was made? Oh, maybe 20, 25 years ago, and it did
West Studi?
West Studi, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Do you know West Studi's a Vietnam vet?
Oh, is he?
Yeah, I met him a couple years. I played in the band, and we were down in Nashville performing, and he was there, and we met and talked to each other. He's a Vietnam vet. In fact, I teased him because he looks tall in the movies, but he's not really that tall.
Well, it's easy to trick people in the movie.
And I even told him, I said, I didn't know Geronimo was Cherokee. West Studi is real Cherokee. I mean, real. He's full-blood Cherokee. And so I told him, I said, yeah, I didn't know. In fact, I teased him about, speaking of Apache, I said, your Apache is terrible.
Was it?
Oh, yeah, because again, being in Vietnam, I served a couple of Apache guys. I served with some Navajos this was in 72. And so that was when languages started coming back. It was proud, to getting to speak language. And I was in the military, and all the Indian guys would just frustrate the white guys because we'd speak our language. and of course, they always thought we were talking about them, But
well, of course, when you don't understand, you always assume it's about you, right?
But the reality was that we were. But yeah, I had a really good friend. In fact, the friend I had there, he was I think he was a second-class petty officer. He was actually a relative of Geronimo, the real Geronimo, and he even looked like him. And he was but I told West that I said I wasn't Nam. I said there was a couple of Apache guys. I said your Apache is terrible. He said, yeah, but he speaks. In fact, he came on, I think it was last year before. He was given an honorary Oscar, and he opened the ceremony with the language, Cherokee language, because that was his first language, And so the languages are really, really, really coming back.
Which is fantastic. And we're going to get more to that when we talk specifically about, the schools and everything. But someone had another question that came in, and this sort of leads into it pretty nicely. How much interaction is there between tribes? And then the second question is, do they all get along? She also thinks this is wonderful information you're passing along. And, I happen to agree, but I'm a little biased. So.
Oh, yeah, we, in this world, especially the modernism now, I mean, there's really a strict, code, what do you want to say about intermarrying, into our clans, our families. And so there's a lot of different tribal people, on my reservation. We interacted a lot with the Oneida when the Oneida came from New York in 1830s, 1840s. And so there was interaction. We've always interacted with the ones that were a really close ally was the Ho-Chunk that they used to call the Winnebago. And there's a lot of Menominee blood there, a lot of Ho-Chunk blood here. Same with the Ojibwe. When they came in around the 1400s, they kind of figured around that time, because the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi and the Odawa, who they call the Anishinaabe, are actually from the East Coast. So they came in just before the Europeans came this way. And so a lot of interaction. So a lot of tribes. I'm mostly Menominee. I am about close to 3/4 Menominee. I'm an eighth Lenape, which is Muncie. They say Muncie, Delaware. And that's a tribe just across our border here to Stockbridge, Muncie. But I'm from the Muncie side. They call Lenape. I am also Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Cree. And my great-grandfather on my mother's father's side actually came down from Canada. So I'm pretty close to being full-blooded, but I also have a grandfather that's very, very famous on my European side. His name was Jefferson Davis. He was my grandfather's grandmother's grandfather. Figure that one out. But he had Menominee wife, and they say for sure he had 2 children, but some say 3. And so one of his sons was named Joe Davis. Joe Davis actually served in the Civil War on the Union Army side, And they say he had to use his Menominee name because there was fear of him being kidnapped by the Union troops because Jefferson Davis was his father.
Wow.
And so that was my grandfather's great grandfather, was Jefferson Davis. So I get a little blending of that. But if you see my brother, he's got the Indian look. He's got the dark hair. You know, I always say the mixed blood look. In my line, I always say I got cheated. You know, but I'm happy with it. I'm happy with that. But there's a lot of intermixture. My grandson, actually, because he also carries the Ho-Chunk and the Oneida blood, that he's got the blood of all the tribes of Wisconsin running through his veins. I have another young daughter that's her dad is he's not on the Oneida rolls, but he's a descendant of Oneida. So, and there is no more full-blood Menominee theoretically on a reservation. The last one passed away about 7-8 years ago. But there are full-blood natives, but they're just no full-blood Menominee. It's a lot of tribes, you know, intermingled. You get up north, you get the Ojibways, you get the Potawatomi, and people moved away to the cities and Milwaukee. You know, there was a time, the reason we ended up in Milwaukee was my mother took part of the Indian relocation program. And so a lot of the Menominee people and all the surrounding tribes mostly went to Milwaukee and Chicago. Some of them went out to the Twin Cities, but most around here went to Milwaukee and Chicago. So there were big Indian communities, and that's where a lot of the intermingling, you know, really got heavy. But even before that, and even when the like I said, when the Oneida came in, and when the Ojibways came in, I mean, there's a lot of tribal people that are of mixed tribal bloods, and because, like I said, there is a real strictness with growing up. You know, I mean, you come home and tell your mom, "Oh, Ma, I found a girl in school. It's pretty, blah blah blah." Well, who is she? Oh, I don't know her family. Well, you better find out. And you come home and, well, oh, her parents are so and so. Then who's her grandparents?
Wow.
Then all of a sudden it's that's your cousin. You can't go with her.
Oh.
So then there was the boarding school days, right? Especially a lot of Menominee. My mother and my family, they all went to Flandreau boarding school. And not only that, even at the boarding school on our reservation, some other tribal people were brought in to go to the boarding school there. So there is a heavy mixture among the tribes, and it's welcomed, it's pushed. People are, you go to doings, you go to powwows, whatever. People announce what tribes they are. There's a pride. There's a lot of pride in your tribal blood, you know. And so we even joke around. Sometimes we go through all our tribal blood, then oh, by the way, I'm also part German or part Irish. Or
Sure.
But I was always taught to be proud of everything that I am. And so I announced that, you know, not only am I Menominee and the other tribes, but I'm also a smidget French. I'm a little bit of English, and I got whatever Jefferson Davis was. I think he was Scottish, I think. But so I'm proud. I'm proud of everything who I am.
Well, you are who you are, right? You really can't get away from it.
Yeah, I can't hide it. I mean, it's in my blood. You know, I can't bleed it out.
That probably would be unhealthy.
I even laugh because when I was a baby and I was born, my mother said I was about 6 months old and I was pretty sick. They didn't know what was wrong with me, so they ended up giving me a transfusion. And so my oldest uncle stepped in and did it. And so I told my mom, I said, "Does that mean I'm more Indian blood now?" There are things you think of when you're a kid, you know.
Well, sure. It makes sense when you're a kid. I mean, it seems like math, right?
Yeah, even when I found out I was going through my heritage line and studying and everything like that, and, you know, I found out, oh, this grandparent, they mixed up. They called him a half-breed, but he was almost full-blooded, and this one. I went all the way back, and I come walking out of tribal enrollment office, smiling ear to ear, and I went home, and the wife says, "What's going on? How come you're so happy?" I said, "Well, I found out who my real grandfather is. I found out my other grandfather had his blood. He was miscalculated, all this." I said, "Man, I come out there, I'm almost full-blooded." I said, "Maybe by the time I die, I will be full-blood." But, you know,
like
that's
wine. You're improving with age, right?
That's the huge pride of Native people, is finding out who you are, where you come from, which is really important. You know, and not only that, but, you know, I mean, we always say you can be one drop. Like they say the Cherokee rule, they call it the one drop rule. And I mean, they can go by 1,000 something of their native blood, and they can be on a Cherokee roll. So Native people are very proud of their lineage because, we have to be. We're still here, and we're still moving, and the government still tries to get us out of here.
Well,
they're trying like crazy to say we're really Asian, but you guys came across that land bridge, you're not really Native American. I said, no, we're not. We're actually pre-Native American.
so wait, is that a real thing that they're trying to say Asian as opposed to Native?
Well, that's kind of what they're saying realistically, because they're saying, yeah, you guys came across that land bridge from Asia. But the more they dig into it, the further away they get. There's actually this last study they did a mitochondrial DNA study, and they found out that the mitochondrial DNA that comes through your mother's line is actually older on this side of the Pacific than the other side of the Pacific. So I have a Hmong friend that, I got to know really good, and we were talking about that. I said, well, according to that, you Hmong people, you really came from us.
I'm sure that went over well.
He just looked at me. I said, you better start learning some Menominee language.
Yeah, before it's too late.
Yeah, we laugh about it because, whatever, only the creator knows,
Right. Well, that's one thing that I have noted from the first time we got together is we wind up laughing more than anything. No matter how, I mean, in the stories, as we progress, I mean, there are darker chapters, just like, to everything, but some darker chapters are darker than others. And it's, but the way you talk about it, we, at the end of it, there always seems to be a reason to laugh, and it's genuine. It's not, it's not just laughing to move beyond something. It's part of you. And there's the complete picture sort of it is really very interesting to me, but
laughter is healing. Laughter is
sure
healing.
Is.
We a lot of things that Native people have went through in our histories, we have to really use that humor, that, even the stories of creation, there's humoristic parts to it. There's parts of laughing. And I remember an elder telling me the creation story, and I just laughed really hard at just kind of the ending of it. But we use humor. In fact, even at our gas station, because we actually got our own gas pump and gas station and bank and everything up here. But you go there and it's a what do you want to say, a laugh up. I just met some friends at the pumps, and we just sat there and they went on about a half hour just laughing and joking. Because up here, when you pull in tribal gas pumps, tribal gas station, it becomes a visiting center, just like Walmart.
Sure.
We call Walmart the gathering of nations, because we go down there, you find the aisle, you start talking, pretty soon someone else comes over. Hey, how you doing? Oh yeah, what's going on? There's like 10 people standing, and it's having a good old time. And the same with the gas pump, people stand there and they'll keep visiting. And
well, sure, as long as you're having fun, why leave?
Oh yeah, you have to. I mean, even like I said, my mother, she survived boarding school. I survived what I survived, but you have to have humor behind it. Otherwise you just live in a depressed state. And even in serving in Vietnam, I dwell more on the humorous, funny, hell-raising, crazy stories than I do on the more what they call 45 minutes of boredom and 15 minutes of hell. But I dwell on the 45 minutes of boredom and craziness and funny stuff that happened. That's the way we survive things.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, now, even though it isn't the smoothest transition, you had brought up the boarding schools and your family. Could you talk a little bit? I'm not going to, ask any sort of pointed questions at the beginning or anything, but can you talk about what you saw growing up, or what you were told as you got older, or what you weren't told about your family's experience within the boarding school? Because it's one thing to have the exhibition we have at the library, which is an incredible exhibition, but it's another thing to hear, the actual living history of it from people. So if you wouldn't mind going into that a little bit, um, that would be great.
Well, in my family, there's quite a few of it. I had talked with a lady out in Middlebury, Vermont, who became a good friend of mine because she tracked me down because she was a writer and she was doing some kind of women's studies. But there was something she was doing, and she had found out that there was this Indian insane asylum in South Dakota, and she had found out there were some Menominee individuals there. So she had contacted me. In the meantime, she was also looking into information about boarding schools. And so she got hold of Dr. Poupart at GB, who referred her on to me, and we become good friends. I mean, I went out to visit them a couple years ago, her and her husband. Unbelievable Packer fans in Vermont. I'm like, holy man, But anyway, she had told me that she was upset because she had read an article about boarding school that she thought was real, but what it turned out was someone that wrote a book that was made up. It was just kind of a characterization type of novel type thing that the person never really lived or been through the experience. They just put things together from stories. And to our people, stories have to be real. I remember a long time ago, they were doing some language stuff, and one of the language people that were studying it that said that they were looking at doing some stories. And so they asked the elder, and the elder said, well, I'm not really a storyteller. And I said, well, can't you just make one up? And he just looked at her for a long time and said, why would I do that? Why would I make anything up? And see, that's the background of Indian culture, of Native culture, is that what we talk about, what we tell about is real. We might do little changes here and there, but they're real. They're realistic value to that. And so with the boarding school, that's, when she started talking with me, I had told her what my experience, but I never was in a boarding school, but my mother was, and my uncles were. And I remember the stories from them when they were kids of how they would come home. Some of them, they fit in pretty good. But, what I found out beyond that is a lot of that was hid so deep that, like I said, my mother had just turned around 70 when she had really come out and admitted that she was molested in boarding school and in the school up here on the reservation. We just made the news a couple weeks ago of the burial ground that a lot of little babies and that were buried in next to the church, and they just let the whole thing overgrow. I remember as a kid, and so going through that was that, like I said, what I went through, not a boarding school, but a really, really bad, Catholic school. It was, I think it was third grade. Was really in that area, and I remember coming home, and I had a really close auntie. Oh, she was my great auntie, and I would tell her about these things. She would say she couldn't believe it. And I can put it simply, she could not believe, why would they do that? Why would they do that to children? What's wrong with those people? And I asked her one time, Auntie, did you ever go? Oh, no. She said, I ran away. My father and my grandfather, we ran into the woods. And back in those days, there wasn't really good vehicles to get back in the woods. There wasn't a lot of roads, and a lot of the older Menominee people lived back in the woods. They lived the old way. And so that's a lot of elders I talked to. That's how some of them escaped that, the older. And I remember talking to elders my mother's age that went to the boarding school and how they were tortured and the things that they were put through for speaking the language. I remember my adopted uncle, who was my main teacher, told me about when anytime he would get caught, he'd be drugged down the steps by his ears, and he would be taken down what they call the dungeon. And what they had this 2x2 strip of wood screwed down to the floor by the doorway, and he was made to kneel on that until he promised not to speak the language. And I said, well, Uncle, did you promise not to do? Oh, yeah. He says, but you know, he said, I had one finger behind my back and my fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
But even that torturous thing that he went through, he laughed about it. Because he said that. He said, yeah, I promised. But he said, you know, if there comes a time to lie, that's when you do it.
Yeah, pick your spot, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, and I would always tell him, Uncle, you always told me it's not good to lie. He said, yeah, but there's a time you have to.
Right.
At one time, too, the way he was to it, at one time we were sitting in a lodge and he would talk about life and everything has the right to live and all. Boy, he was really, you know, poetic and everything. About all of a sudden he sits there and he swats a mosquito. I said, Uncle, you just killed that mosquito. He said, that's called blood vengeance. He said, you respect all living things until they bite you. Then you can squish them.
Yeah, that's a pretty good rule of thumb, I'd say.
But he was like that. Yeah. And some of the other ones I did too. I remember one of the feisty teachers that was one of our really hardcore language teachers. Boy, I tell you what, she said she actually fought with the nuns when they would try to do. She would fight right back. She says, I was 8 years old and I was scrapping with those nuns. She said, I'll be darned, they're gonna pull me around by my hair. I pulled her veils off. Oh, she was quite the warrior woman.
Well, good for her.
Oh yeah, I mean that our language survived until that time because of them. Unfortunately, the movement, it was kind of in a way our own tribal fault because we had trouble getting support from our tribal government to support the language until it was really getting too late. You know, fortunately right now there's a couple of young ones that took on the lead and got to study with some of the elders before they passed away. So the language is coming back, but it's not the old language, as I say, the language I remember, but it's good enough. It's good enough that we got our language back. But back in the day, I mean, they really tried to put our beliefs down, everything. You know, they didn't want us to be our own, who we are, who God made us to be. They didn't want us to be, and who has that power? You know, so in those schools, that's the way it was. They wanted us to be something that we weren't, something that we couldn't be. You know, it's like, you know, it's one. I remember a story one guy told that he said it was a story about an eagle and an owl and how they fought, you know, to change sides, but it said you can't because that's who you are and you have to live that way. And so that's kind of what the story is. And a lot of our stories reflect that who we become to be. Just like the word that your town, Manitowoc, Manato is the base word of that. And now they use that for the translation of the word for a wild animal. But in our language, it's more deeper. That part really translates into a being with power to be whatever it is. And so that's where that word comes from. So a Manato, Ojibwe, they say Manidu, that's the essence of a power that really is whatever it is. If it's a wolf, if it's a horse, you know, if it's a chipmunk, that's what it is. And that's the power that God gave that being. So that's what Manitou means. So Manitowoc, we say in our language, Manatowoc. Ojibwe is Maniduok. It means that where they gather, that's the place. That's really the plural form of it, but it really conforms on that at one time, long time ago, some of them came from that and they came out of the ground. And if you go between Manitowoc and Sheboygan, there's a hill there of great power that they say at certain times light emits from that. So that's where those words come from, and they're really, really important to understand, you know, those words. So even our own words for ourselves as a being, you know, that is really something that God created, you know. And it said when the Creator, you know, made the earth and made all these things, in our language, in our stories, it said that He sent forth a woman, because at that time, this planet they call Yom Manas, which means this island, was covered with water. And so that's why He sent forth a woman from that opening in the sky. They call the Pleiades, and we call the Seven Sisters. And the Creator sent forth a woman to take care of the earth because it was in the form of water. And they even say that's why a woman, when she's fully pregnant, looks like the earth is inside of her. And so it said that she was sent forth and all beings come from her. And so when it come time for those beings to be put on earth, it says the creator took parts of dirt, certain parts of the earth, and placed them in a certain place. And part of that story talks about that when all those beings came to be and they started populating, that the creator, whatever you call that one, put borders so that they would stay where they belonged, that they were supposed to stay there. And so that's where they say the native people were put in one place, the African people, the European people, they were all put in their homelands. That's where they belonged. And the creator gave them all their specific gifts that they were meant to have. And I remember when I was younger, they had a rule that we had a society up here that's still here. It's called the Big Drum. And the only person that could not come to the Big Drum was a white man. No white man was allowed in the Big Drum. And they say because it was a white man that violated what the creator did in those borders, that he crossed that ocean he wasn't supposed to. And so how far back that goes, I don't know. But that's some of the stories that were taught about why these things are important and why certain beings are important, why humans, no matter what color you are. In our language, we talk about people, we don't use color to identify people. We talk about where they come from. Mametikosu, that's a Frenchman. And because when they first see them, they come in these big boats. So Waz, far away, Metik means wood, Metikus is a wooden boat, and Awe is where they come from. So it's people of the wooden boat, as we call the French people. And so they all have names. So even for the term of someone as non-Indian, I don't like to use the word white people, but anybody that's not native to this land, we call them Mokoman. Plural would be Mokomanok, which really is the word for Mokahao, means where it rises, the sun rises. So that is a term for basically an Easterner. If it's an Indian person, is Wapananakiwak, then that's a person of the morning star. And so there's actually differences of how we dictate who's who. So Mokoman that we use for a non-native or American, we say, can be anybody that's not native. So in our languages, that even so that we don't identify people by color. My uncle one of my other uncles told me a story, because I was kind of having a bad day because one of my uncles was calling me a Mokoman. He was calling me a white man, and I was sad and everything. And he said, "You're not really Indian, and this." So I went to this old guy, and he told me the story of the wolf. And he was talking about these wolves, how they came to be, the power that they were given. And he said, the creator made those wolves all different. He said they don't fight among each other because of their color. They all have their own hierarchy where they belong. Each one of those colors has a power. And so out of that story, I got the strength to deal with, the way I look, the way I was brought up. And also because of that, it made it more important to me to know my culture and language. Like I said, my older brother, who was basically looks native, knows very little about culture and language. So a lot of my relatives that were like that, they all come to me, and here I am, one of the lighter ones, but that's the power of your culture, so it's really important to know those words. So, again, we shot out there, got in a tangent, right?
Oh, no, but that's okay. I mean, that's what we do. And I think that's great, but it really, it makes it hit home why the practice of denying these young people their language when it's bad enough that they were taken away from their families and their communities, and that then just the harsh stripping of their identity from, everything from the cutting of the hair, but to the harsh cracking down on not being able to speak your language when it is so obviously, from I'm learning, so interwoven into just who you are, not just what you speak. It runs deeper than that. And it's just
well, you're like me. I was brought up in a world of things are what they are. That is the main lesson I've ever learned in my life. Things are what they are. You are who you are. You look like what you look like. The reality of what is, and growing up with that, and when I went to that school, they didn't want that. You know,
Right.
they didn't want me to be what I was. They didn't want me to say what I could say and speak what I could speak. You know, and I got tortured, knocked over a desk, you know, broken eardrum, pulled around by my hair on the floor, you know, stood up and sat in the corner wearing that little peaked hat, that little Dante, you know. And I'd even joke around and say, look, I'm a unicorn, you know. You know, that nun didn't have no sense of humor.
That I am familiar with.
So one day uh, I survived that, and I told my mom I didn't want to go to school. She said, well, you have to, because, you know, I had found out that because we didn't have a lot of money, she couldn't pay the tuition. So at that time, because we were Indian, that their job was to what do you call that, convert us. And so I got sent back that following year and ran into some more trouble. And the main thing that happened was another nun was me and my brother were roughhousing. I got hurt. I started crying. I think she was just really trying to console me, but I was defiant, because that's the way I was when I got angry. I really got angry. And so she went to grab at me, and I went to push her hand away, and I accidentally hit her on the breast. And so she grabbed me by the collar. You get down, I'll go by father. And so I got sent down by father, and I thought, oh man, all the way down. I knew I was going to get a whooping, because he had that round stick with the little pointer on the tip. And so anyways, he was waiting for me. And I went down, and he grabbed me, he opened that door, and he threw me in his room, and I flew across the room. I hit a chair, and I kind of did the move that my hero Kato did. Kato the Green Hornet. Yeah, I hit the wall. I slid down. I seen an opening between his leg. I shot under that. I tuck and rolled. I flew out the door, and off I ran. And I remember Uncle always told me, he said, when that ever happens again, you run and don't look back. And I ran. So like I was telling you, it was like that when you see that run, Forrest, run. That was me. Run, the poos, run. And I ran all the way home nonstop. It was probably about a mile. I ran home, and then I was sitting there playing in the yard, and then my stepdad pulled in. He said, "What you doing home?" So I told him, I said, that father tried to hit me again. He said, "That's it. I'm talking to your mom." And so when mom come home, they had a talk. And so my mom just said, "That's it. You're not going back there no more." And I was like, "Oh, goody, goody." But the interesting part from that story was we had to go to this. It was called an all black school, because this was the time of segregation in Milwaukee. So there was a school a couple blocks away that was termed an all black school. And so in order to go to that school, there had to be a special consultation to be able to get in there. So what happened is, I don't know how my mom had something to do with it, or they just did it, but they what they call excommunicated us. They kicked us out of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. They said we could never go there again, blah, blah, blah. And so that way we had to go to that black school. And so one day I was in there, and in the Catholic school, the nuns and priests were the bullies, but now I'm going to the school over here, and all the kids are bullies, right? So
Right.
a different standard of bullies. But anyway, the other school was you stick up for yourself, you hold your own, you're okay, Anyway, so I was having a bad day one day, and actually my teacher's name was Miss Strawberry. It was my first crush in school. And so she says, "Dave, what's wrong with you?" And I said, "I don't like being in hell." And she looked at me. She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't like being in hell. I'm in hell." I'm like, "Holy man." She said, "Well." So she sent me down to the principal, and he was a nice guy. And he sat down, and he says, "Dave, what are you talking about being in hell?" I said, "Well, when I was at the other school and they booted me down, they said, 'You're going to hell.' And here I am." A fourth grader's view of the world, right?
Did the principal laugh at that?
Oh, he grabbed me and he hugged me. It was the first time I ever got hugged by a man. And he hugged me, and of course I was cautious, but I just,
Sure.
I was kind of like shaking. He said, "You're okay, you're okay, you're gonna be okay." He said that's all right, you have to go through things, and so he would always come see me, and he would say, "You okay, this and that, But then the other side happened is I had to learn to stick up for myself, because that kind of school, I mean, that was you had to hold your own, So right off the bat, I ran this guy, and he was harassing me. And I was like, so I went to my brother. My brother was 2 years older. He had a good friend that was supposed to be the toughest in the school. And so one day I went to him and he said, man, Dave, he said, this school here is, you got to hold your own. He says, either you're going to have to fight the kid, and even if you get beat, at least you're going to let him know that you're not going to take this no more. And I said, okay. So my brother said, well, I'll tell you what, he says, I'll teach you after school. We'll put on the boxing gloves and we'll do this and do that. So we got home, we were doing that, and the old man said, what's going on? So we told my dad, my stepdad. And he said, okay, well, you got to do what you got to do. He says, it's the only way you're going to handle this. And I said, okay. So what happened was my brother, he said, you're a really good wrestler. He said, you're better than me, because I could pin my brother, and because I was a little bit more chunkier. And so he said, here you do this. So we practiced this one little technique where he would swing at me. I'd duck underneath. I'd pick him down. I would throw him on the ground. I'd get him into scissors, leg scissors lock. And when I did that, he could never get out of it. He said, you get that kid in that and you make him give, So I did that. And I tell you what, it worked just like a play acting on WWE wrestling. Kid swung at me. I went underneath. I picked him up. We went to the ground. I wrapped my legs around him. I started squeezing. And squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. All of a sudden, there was this really bad odor come out.
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah, he pooped himself. And so I pushed him away, and I got up, and he got up, and he was trying to go by his friends. All of his friends were pushing him away. They're making in fun of him, this and that. But what happened is he didn't come to school for about 2 weeks, and I felt bad. And so I told my mom, I felt bad that I did that to him. She said, well, maybe you better go apologize to him. So one day I found out where he lived, and I went over to his house, and I knocked on the door, and his mother came to the door, and I said, I want to talk to Dwight. And she says, well, what do you want to talk to Dwight for? I said, well, I'm the guy that, I got in a fight with him, and I squeezed him, and he pooped himself. Oh, you're the guy. I said, yeah. She said, well, that's good for him because he needed that. But I said, I feel bad for him, So she said, wait a minute. So she brought him to the door, and I apologized to him. I said, I'm sorry. And he apologized to me. And we became the best of friends. And we rode bike together and had a good time. And I hung out with his parents' place. His dad would even would tell the way, now you behave because he'll make you poop yourself. but then I learned how to negotiate and how to talk to people, and I became good friends with him and his family. I mean, it was really good. But that was, the transformation from going to the Catholic school and going to a school like that, where you have to pretty much hold your own, So it was kind of, I guess, every grade's a lesson.
For sure. Definitely. We are kind of coming up against our time for the evening.
Okay.
And this is a really good, transition, because next time I think we're going to talk more about Milwaukee and your experiences there, even more and everything. But I did have a question, if I could just flip back, because this is something that you had said when people would just back to the board, like the initial coming to get from boarding schools, and some people would just take off and head to the woods and like that. So how did troops just arrive? Did government agents arrive and just take people? What was the process there?
I was told that the government man, the G man, whatever you want to call him, would come to the door with the Indian police, because we had Indian police then, and they would just come to the door, and they would actually have federal authorities, and they would say, where's your kids? And take them. Yeah, form a kidnapping. But that was the government process at the time. The government created that boarding school, and they took the kids. Simple as that. Can you imagine that in this day and age, what that would be like? I mean,
No.
it's kidnapping.
It is.
But the government gave themselves right through, because that's one thing I always question. How can a bunch of people come in from some other country, create a government and tell the people of this land, okay, now, we're the bosses now, we're taking everything, and we're taking your kids too. And they create this boarding school. And it was of course, the theme behind it was, kill the Indian, save the man. But these are children, and they're taken out. So yeah, that was the process that I was told happened. But I was also told that in some cases it was more, because my grandpa he was actually a bare knuckle fighter. He was someone you didn't mess with, and plus he was a government ranger, so it was a little bit different. And he even had the what do you want to say, the discipline, or what do you want to call it, to tell the government, you don't mess with my kids. My grandmother was the same way. They had 20 children. I mean, 17 lived to adulthood. The youngest, their youngest son had what they now call Down syndrome. He had a large tongue. The government even wanted to take him, and Grandma said, "No, you're not taking him. You get out of here." She chased the government official right out of her house with a frying pan.
Wow.
But it all goes back to when the Menominee, when we were losing our lands, and through treaties or whatever process, and a lot of them were just dirt treaties, and they were using threats that you signed this treaty or we're going to take it. Either way, we're going to get it. And so it came down to when we had been given certain parts of land. Finally, we signed a treaty that actually took the last part of our land away, and the tribe was down by west of Oshkosh, over by what was that? No, I can't say Winnicunny. And so anyway, they were going to move us to Minnesota, and negotiations were stalled. We had one of our leaders at the time. There's more to the story. Someday I can share more of it, and so he was putting things off, and finally talked him into moving us where we are now. So the original reservation where we're at was a staging area until they could make arrangements to move us to Crow Wing country in Minnesota. But the leaders had stalled and demanded that the leaders would go look at the land. So they put us here. And finally, the leaders went out there, they come back and they told the tribal people in council, they say, it's a bad place. There's two big tribes fighting. They want to put us in the middle. At that time, there were only about 2,500 Menominee, maybe 3,000. And they said there was the hunting was bad, a lot of swampland. They said, we go there, we're going to die. And all the people together, they just voted to say, no, if we're going to die, we're going to die here. So they put forward the effort to the government to say, no, we're not going to move. So the government actually sent troops, and they were coming out of what now known as Shawano. Shawano wasn't really there yet, but they were coming about 2 or 3 miles out. And so the Menominee sent out some scouts to go tell them, what the plan was. And so they went and said, no, they're not going to go. They're going to fight. They're all armed. They're ready to go. Men, women, and children. They're going to fight to the teeth. And so luckily there was a commander or whatever in charge, and they said, they made negotiations, so they allowed us to keep this part of our land. So that's how we kept our reservation. But it's always said, Menominee, we're very peaceful people, but don't rile us up because we won't move. That's the background behind it. So my grandfather was in that form. He was in that, no, you ain't doing that to my kids. If you do, I'll come pay you a visit. And my grandfather, even though my mom said I look like him, and he had his really fiery eyes, because said you could see the wolf. You could see the wolf in him, that. But so my mother always said that when the kids would come home on a little bit of break, my grandpa would ask them, "Are they being mean to you? Do I need to go down there?" My one uncle even said that one day one of the priests was kind of harassing him. He turned to that priest, "My dad is Elek Wapus. He will come see you." He said that priest gave him peanut butter and everything. So even though there are some very, very tragic tales, there also are some humorous ones. Even my mother, she had, she talked about some things too, of this and that. And one day, one of the nuns was trying to teach her how to sew, and the nun kept messing up. And my mom said, "Give me that. You don't know what you're doing." There's even one of my great uncle. He was a carpenter, and he was teaching the boys how to cut wood, and he was using a planing tool. He was pushing that planer, and he didn't have that pushing stick, so he used his hand, and he cut off the tip of his finger. And they said, Dan, you need to go to the hospital. Wait a minute, I got to finish his board first.
Oh, no.
He finished his board. Okay, let's go to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Then later on in life, him and his brother, his name was Dan. He's actually on that. He was actually one of the World War II, pinups to promote for Indians being in the military. His name was Dan Wapus. There's a government picture of him. Anyway, his brother was Joe. They're both carpenters later on. And so one day they were talking about building a porch. And so my uncle says, "Uncle Joe, Uncle Dan, which one of you are the best carpenter?" Uncle Joe goes, "Well, I got all my fingers." So anyway, Part of
He
life.
wins by default.
So next time, give me a heads up because, like I said, I got into this little volume or something, and then I was like, oh man, I gotta get home, and so
Hey, it all worked out. It all worked out. So I'll give you an earlier heads up in the day next time.
This was a good lesson on what we call Indian time. Indian time is things start when they start, they end when they end.
And that's exactly correct. So it seems like a good enough solution to me, and this seems like a great place just to stop for this time. Thank you, everyone who came. We started a little bit late, but I still think it was a fantastic presentation, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. Tune in on July 12th, same time. Well, 6 o'clock. In theory, the real starting time. But when we start, we start. So just play it by ear. If you like this presentation, tell people about it. It's going to be archived on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. You still can see it. You can't ask a question during it, but you can see the entire conversation. And thank you, Napuz, for being here tonight. It was a real honor and pleasure and privilege having you here. And I can't wait for our next conversation. So everyone tune in on July the 12th, which is a Tuesday night, and we'll pick up the conveation. And
as my hero said, same bat time, same bat channel.
And on that note, there's really no need to say anything else. Have a great night.
There you go.
Take care. Bye-bye.